A base building is being damaged. Your base is under attack.
Give me orders. On station. Something is moving out there. 6. As you order. As you command. On station. Ready to go. Give me orders.
Enemy fighter. As you order.
Enemies.
On station.
Okay, hello everyone. This is going to be basically a little weekly recap from the last time we met, which was the monthly AMA last month on the last day of the month. I'm really just going to really quickly just kind of sum up the progress we've been having on the team, any issues we've ran into. If we have any time, we'll try and answer some questions at the end. So right off of the bat, I'm gonna pull up what we discussed, or rather what I posted earlier in the month on Discord around the 3rd. And basically the idea is that we've been working very extensively to resolve bugs, fix jank, improve performance, and just kind of fix up as much as feasibly possible before we move on to the new advanced AI for the vehicles. Um, and we also recently changed engine versions to the 5.3. So I'll go into that briefly and what that means for our team. We're also closely eyeing 5.4 because a lot of features in 5.4 are pretty revolutionary for the engine. And that will also kind of quite a bit help us out in our day-to-day operations and also from just authoring new content like destruction and whatnot. A lot of features are leaving beta and alpha and and some like features of the engine. But right off the bat, we did a poll. I would say about a month ago, and one of the biggest things that I saw in the poll was that people are super excited about the co-op. They're super excited about factions and little things like that that we've kind of had to like push off into the foreground. So I just wanted to take the time to acknowledge what I posted on the 3rd on Discord, which was basically like we fully acknowledge there's a lot of excitement around factions, around Pierce, around Natalie in terms of the police faction and the anarchist faction. Our goal is to hit on those when we get to the campaign towards the end of the year. It'll just kind of depend on just how things go. Regardless, we have to do them anyway for the campaign. So it'll be a trickle effect for them. When we do it for the campaign, we'll just implement them into the pandemic because we have all the assets modeled at that point. Um, the other part was obviously the operator. So we decided based off of the poll results to push the operator, everything on the operator card to 1.4 so we can get the co-op sooner because that was going to take a month in its own just to do it. And it got the least amount of votes out of, I think, almost everything on the entire poll. I think there was only like 60 to 50 people that voted for the operator. And it's something that's really important to me. But we're going to basically just kind of push off his, I guess you could say, retrofits and enhancements for later on in the class so that we could do the remaining bug fixes that we're trying to do right now, tree. And then at that point, immediately move on to the AI, the lieutenant AI, and then do the co-op. So that way, that'll almost round out the year right there in terms of like the schedule that I put, which is a rough schedule. So keep in mind that a suggestion comes up, someone might bring something to our attention that we weren't aware of, a fatal bug might come into play, and then that might obviously adjust our rough schedule that I posted on the 3rd. I mean, we've already kind of had to like have some he and ho for fixing the bugs and the civilian evacuation issues and other things that have presented themselves. But I mean, based off of looking at reviews and looking at people were saying on the internet, looking at Spider Cat's video, it seems like people want a more feature. I guess you can not feature complete, but sorry, more of a bugless experience more than anything at this point. So we've been trying to basically do that before we shoehorn in the rest of the new content, and then we add even more bugs into the game, and we make it even harder to enjoy. I mean, I was playtesting the build that we're about to release, we were going to release today, but I need to do some more further testing. I was playtesting before the podcast, is to write down some more notes, earmark some more issues, and then if I can't fix them or they can't be fixed today, then that patch will be rolled out on Monday. But right now, I'm still investigating some issues here and there because there was a lot of bug fixes and a lot of changes that are coming in the update that we're pushing out today. Ideally, maybe Monday, worst case, where we implement the new engine version, which has better performance, better nanite performance, better lumen performance. And just generally, we also just kind of ratchet it up and fix a lot of bugs people were reporting on the Steam forums and on Discord. So you figure, but we'll get into that later in the discussion in terms of basically some of the other bullet points. So that kind of wraps up the poll, or that is not the poll, well, the discussion of the post poll, but at the same time, just going over the post that I made. Now, the next thing I just kind of wanted to brush upon or just hit upon was the Calypso is getting a Calypso map. Calypso Valley is getting a facelift going into the future. I posted this on Discord on 4.4. I will actually bring up the picture for people on YouTube to see. People on Discord can see it pretty easily just by going to the announcements channel. But you can see right here, essentially, this is kind of the rough idea that we're going for Calypso. And the idea is to basically just make it support the newer mechanics and systems like strategic resources, like being able to evacuate in a more efficiently, being able to use the carrier, being able to use the LCACs, and just kind of taking in some of the criticism of that map and kind of having like little like valleys and areas where you can quarantine off and kind of like it's easier to kind of like control the infection in some areas by some natural valleys and borders where the infected can't climb these hills. So they actually have to go to like these little like passageways and like little entrances in and out of certain junctions. They kind of allow you to kind of give you a little more flexibility in terms of like if you don't want to immediately push into the city, you could push for one of the outskirts military bases or push for one of the nearby foresty regions or push for like maybe somewhere in the middle, like maybe like one of the intersections and just build your base there and then slowly but surely just push into the city based off of however you want to play that map. We'll be adding 2 airports, 2 docks, and strategic resources that are going to be pre-placed, but they won't come online until we officially get to the Cirque and the Doctrine revamp stuff. The next thing that we kind of hit upon, is basically the 0.15 update that we released on April 4th. We essentially, I don't know if I'm wondering if people are liking this, but we pushed in the attack move We've pushed a lot of improvements to attack move to have them respect and keep formations. So then that way they're better, they're more reliable in terms of like you give them an attack move, they're not gonna clog up and blob up into like one huge monstrosity. And then if one AoE attack hits them, it kills 6 guys, 8 guys, 10 guys. And that was really frustrating when I was playing the game, when I've seen other people play the game, where it's like people would kind of avoid the attack move order with like the devil because it was just cumbersome. So hopefully those changes that we baked in around the third are a lot better, and they're making your guys' play sessions a lot more easier to play the game rather. We also put in another feature that was suggested when we had a sit down with the community on Discord about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which was a direct attack order that basically will try and get your units to actively follow whoever you right click and attack. And they will essentially the basic gist of it is that if you right click someone and everyone can see that target, they won't move and they'll all shoot that target. If that target attempts to run away or move away, then the moment they start to leave the unit's line of sight, they'll start to form up into whatever formation they were in that you had them assigned to by default or by override for the group, and follow them in that formation to pursue and kill said target. Whether it be a structure, whether it be infected units, whether it be civilians. The idea is that like it's meant to work for everything, and it's supposed to work for the helicopters, the mechanized units, and the non-mechanized units. I know I saw some questions earlier in the general Discord of people asking, does it work for helicopters? Yes, it should be working for helicopters. So if it's not, let us know. Let us know the circumstances, and we will investigate that. We fixed some issues. Michael's working on the garrison system on and off in terms of making their animations seem more fluid. So if you look in the Ajax uncovered version, you'll notice that the animations are a lot more fluid when they do a 180 turn. When they just 90 degrees, 180. When they're turning around, they look a lot more fleshed out, a little bit nicer. There's still some oddities of guns where, like, I think it was the MK14 for the assault, or I think one of no, I think it's the M14 or whatever it was. Like that one kind of acts a little bit funny still with some kind of jitter. So we're kind of trying to wrap up the remaining of the animations hopefully in the next couple of weeks and just be done with it for the core game. And then at that point, he'll just go on and work on polishing up the horror maps or something else potentially. But we need to kind of get the animations in the game in like a point where they're solid, they're polished, and we're not constantly adjusting them and tweaking them. So that's something I'm going to be pushing for in the next couple of weeks to just kind of wrap it up, get it done. Because one thing I also want to do, just to kind of throw in here, is that I feel like the horde maps need a little bit of a facelift. We need a couple more added. So that's something that we're also looking at long term as some of the artists free up and they can't work on programming or other aspects. They can at least be able to like polish up and clean up or make new maps that are free that you guys can play while the programmers are working on the circuit of doctrine stuff. We're working on the vehicles. We're working on, the other line items on the roadmap. They'll be working on like things that are like hidden that are just on check boxes that we have on behind the scenes that we feel we need to do better on or improve as graphics has gotten better in some aspects of the game. Maybe some areas have fallen behind visually. So that's kind of how we're going to work that after they kind of get through their pipeline of like animation and the vehicle modeling. There were a lot of formation fixes. There were a lot of evacuation fixes. I'm sure there are still some evacuation issues, and if you guys run into those, feel free to let me know. Ping me on Discord, make a forums thread, make a forums thread on Steam. I try and read everything. I try and keep up with everyone. Sometimes it's not feasible based off of the other people tagging me, but if I don't reply, just tag me again. I don't care. Like, literally, if it's been like a day or a couple of days and I haven't responded back to you, just tag me. I don't care. This is that way, like, I just got overwhelmed or something came up or X, Y, and Z, and that way I can reach out and we can kind of figure out what's going on in your game sessions, if it's a bug, if you have a concern, whatever it is. I'm always open for criticism when it comes to that. Let's see, what else did we do that's notable? Other than that, it was like fixing up non-combat weapons. Another suggestion that someone gave to us was that if a weapon runs out of ammo for a primary and you get ammo sometime recently after they switch to their secondary, after they empty their magazine of their pistol, they'll switch over to their primary weapon instead of staying on their secondary weapon, which was a quality of life change that we snuck in the last 2 weeks to basically make it to where your units are a little bit more intelligent. Of like, oh wait, I was out of my M4. I switched to my pistol. I walked by an ammo box or an ammo runner came by, and he was like, "Here you go, bro. Here's some ammo." But in the old version, they'd stay on their pistol until you told them to switch over. So we made that change. So then that way they'd be like, "I have ammo. I should switch over to my M4 because that's more reliable than my M9 or whatever gun I'm using as a secondary." So that was something we did. Um, we also just kind of fixed up some display issues, or with like MOs that guns that don't have MO, like the scanner, the bunker buster, or whatever. They're not gonna like spam your screen with warnings anymore, saying low MO, no MO, like that kind of stuff. We kind of fixed that in there recently, and then something actually just to kind of get ahead a little bit. The build that I'm testing right now, there was actually a bug, and I don't know how long it's been in the game for, but I noticed it when I was recording for a trailer earlier in the week. Is that if you look very closely for a couple of milliseconds randomly for the player camera, it will randomly zoom in and then zoom out to random areas of the map as you're if you move the camera too frequently. So we did fix that also in the next batch that's coming up. Then I'm kind of still evaluating after, well, before this AMA and after the AMA for a couple hours. I'll be evaluating and taking notes down. So that's another thing that I'm happy to say is fixed going into it. Let's see. What else did we fix? I mean, it was mostly just navigation and oddities that basically we just reported on the Discord. We fixed up and added a new tutorial for people that were having issues with civilian evacuation as we added a new slide. We're going to be partnering with oh my God, I'm having a hard time not pronouncing his name. Grand Moff Tarkin, one of our YouTubers that's taken it upon himself to make a video tutorial. We're going to commission a video tutorial series with him, with art that we're going to be providing him and stuff like that to basically further explain the game in like maybe a 6 to 8 part video tutorial series that we're going to link into the game for right now until we have the time and the resources to make a fully fleshed tutorial, kind of section in the game, which is not going to happen foreseeably for the next 5 to 6 months. So that's something else we're going to be pushing in the summer with him. Is basically you can see some of his video tutorials in the community hub under the video section. So yeah, no, like we're gonna be doing that to just kind of help improve, just kind of like people understanding how the game plays and its depth. Because I got some recent criticism in the forums, community forums, and people were saying like our trailers and our screenshots aren't representative of the depth in the game, and that had we better conveyed it in some cases, some of their friends would be more accommodating to buying the game because they didn't even know there was civilian management or diplomacy or civilian evacuation. They thought it was like a warband mountain blade where you played as like a third person operator and you never actually played as an RTS perspective. So we're also going to be working on our presentation going into the summer as well. So that's something else we're just kind of working out and just kind of communicating with people to kind of get their opinion and their perceptions of how they see the game and how we can improve that presentation online. Let's see. Beyond that, we released another update earlier, like around. Oh, let's see. This one was around the 8th. The last one we released was basically just more crash fixes, move the right click target fixes, formation pathing issues, some typos. We fixed some civilian evacuation issues where basically, like if you built a civilian administration zone, sometimes they would be included in the wrong zone. So you would have two that were talking to the same zone because some kind of weird border was not set up correctly. Someone like split the poly wrong. So basically it was like the complexity of our zone shape. It was like forming a collision that was basically like imploding in on itself. So basically like it was like involved, it was including two zones when there shouldn't have been two zones, and that should have been this zone and that zone. So we hunted that issue down and fixed it based off of, I forget who reported it, but someone reported it on the Discord forums, and then we hunted it down. We were able to fix it. Let's see. And then for that, we've been trying to fix some issues with like bright flashes of rain and stuff like that. We're trying to fix another issue And the other issue that Spider-Cat mentioned this in his video, where basically at times the game some textures can flicker based off of how high your camera is when you're zooming in and out. I mentioned that briefly a couple days ago on the actually yesterday on the Discord, but that's something we're still investigating and trying to figure out the best way of doing it because you figure it comes down to like that's how we handle optimization on the project is that is a issue of like two meshes trying to render on top of each other because the nanite objects aren't properly distance calling, but having them still improves the performance of the game. So we can't just take it out because that would half the performance of the game across the board. With that texture shimmering that we have going on, we're like, it's really like I'm like not what's the word? I'm not really like receptive of it because I've gotten so used to it. I feel like, but other people bring it to my attention, like YouTubers or people on Discord, and I'm like, oh shit, I see what you mean now. So it's one of those things where like we have a couple cats working into that to try and see if we can figure out that transition issue. And they're actually doing some testing as we speak right now over the weekend to see if they can kind of figure out a way of solving that. So then that way it's one less thing. I think Spider Cat literally said that was the number one quality of life issue that he felt needs to be fixed because it personally affects his vision when he's playing the game. So that is something that we're looking into, and it's on our like R&D research list essentially for the engine and for the game. Um, let's see. I guess I'll segue into the MRS. So we got the MRS into the engine. It's rigged. It's working. The tracks work. I don't know if it's shooting yet because you figure it hasn't been handed over to the programmer. So odds are that custom solution isn't in yet. But it is running it in the engine. After my artist finishes seeing if he can basically figure out the shimmering issues with the world, then he'll get back to rigging and working on the C5 Galaxy. We're gonna have a little bit of overhead bleed over because you figure we're still hunting down bugs and all that, so it gives them some time to kind of hunt down those issues and kind of figure it out. While we're working as the programmers working on the bugs and issues and whatnot. So that'll give us a little bit of leeway there. I will show the cat on YouTube the MRS to the people that are on our Discord. So here's the MRS for the people that are on Discord. The people in announcements, I will link to that in the chat that we're in. Give me just a moment. The people that haven't seen it, there you go. And let me switch to the next picture. There you go. So there's our beauty. That's the third and last super weapon in the game, which is you have your support option, you have your infantry support vehicle, which is going to be the Bradley, and then you have the Abrams for the armored. Then you have the Apache, which will be getting a buff for the airborne corps. So that's generally the direction we're going into. Is those technically four super weapons. You already have the third. You already have one of them right now, but that will be getting a facelift in the future, just to make it a little more fleshed out, a little more reliable too. Because I want to add abilities to the Apache, so you could tell it to not shoot its rockets, but then you could also tell it to shoot its rockets at selective targets, similar to like Company of Heroes for like an ability. So then that way you can have them hold their missiles in reserve. Because I hate in Wargaming Red Dragon where they just blow their load on like the first unit they see, and then you're like, my missiles are all gone. What do I do? What the heck? So I always hated that in Red Dragon, and it seems like I've recreated the whole problem I hated in Cepheus. So we need to fix that. So let me see. Let me switch back over to the main broadcast, and let me check my list here. So other than that, though, we have been. I'll summarize the last thing, which is basically an announcement. So let me pull that up real fast. So we updated the 5.3, and what that essentially brings is it brings. Well, I mentioned it briefly. Is it's mostly performance. 5.3 is more of like a soft update going into 5.4, where it's like we just kind of improved and cleaned up some of our code. There's nothing too crazy in 5.3 besides some HLOG generation for procedurally generated assets, which is something that we're going to be looking into long term for being able to place infected growth over the map. So then that way we're able to, because when we did it before, we R&D'd it and tried it, the engine did not do a very good job being able to handle the sheer amount of infection growth we were adding to the world. So essentially, So can you guys not hear me? Okay, people can hear. Okay, yeah. What to say? Okay, so like you figure that's something. It's called procedural content generation or PCG, hierarchical generation. That's something we're going to be looking into when we get some downtime. I would say after the co-op at this point, where the idea would be is that we can at least be able to pre-generate infection growth and then h-lot it for optimization's sake. And that's something we're gonna be looking into because that way it wouldn't be pre-placed by a level designer. It'd be like foliage rules. Like if you guys saw the tech demo for Unreal Engine, where they basically had like the forest, and as you move things, the forest would regenerate and recalculate based off of rules and algorithms. So that's something we're going to be looking into. So that way we don't pre-place the growth and it just grows based off of rules, like grass or moss or something, or mold, whatever, something like that. So that's something we're going to be looking into long term for what's been baked in the 5.3. And then, from my understanding, it got even further improvement in 5.4. And we'll R&D it and test it and go from there and whatnot. They did add some landscape for Nanite and some other stuff like that, but there's really not too much that we benefit from besides just the PSD and just improved performance for Nanite and Lumen. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward there. Um, let's see. Let me look at my next list. And then the last thing we did is basically right now we worked on the carrier doors, the further MRS carrier. Sorry, not the MRS, the carrier polish. We made it to the doors open and close finally. We made it to where the LCAC can be seen in the back of the carrier now finally. We're going to be doing that for the LCAC, so your Abrams and your units show up on the top of the LCACs when they're leaving and going. And then let me see. And then for the carrier doors, obviously that opens and closes now. We're going to be making some changes where essentially the idea would be is that that's a lot of gifts on the channel. I gotta close the chat because you guys are killing my train of thought. But basically, we're going to be doing some edits for the LCAC, so you can see your units on the deck. And then for the aircraft carrier, what I'm trying to get in early next week as well for some edits is that when you undeploy or when you de-garrison the LCACs from the LHA-6, they all leave on top of each other. And that's an issue. So we're going to be improving our code so that they leave single file. And then if you tell 3 or 2 LCACs to leave at the same time, the first one will drive, 3 LCACs distance out. And the second one will take the second position, and the first one will take the first position. So that way they'll leave in a line. It's really weird that they all just leave on top of each other, and it's just odd. So that's something else that needs to be fixed going into like early next week. Let me see. What time is it for questions? Yeah, we could do questions for about 10 to 20 minutes, and then we can wrap it up. Because it's going to be a pretty short one. It's kind of boring because only bugs and like more trivial things to fix. I wish we had more exciting things to show you guys, but realistically, it just comes down to like we need to get these bugs and these like performance. There's not really that many performance issues, but we need to get these bugs under control. And the jank. And then we can get on to the fun part of doing the advanced vehicle AI. And then at that point, I'll be able to actually just load up a session and show you guys what we're working on. So I apologize if it wasn't as exciting as last week, but you figure it's a necessary evil to make sure that you guys get the game you deserve that's bugless, and we're building on a good foundation that we're able to get you the features that you guys are wanting to get. Anyhow, let's see for questions. Let me see what we got for chat. That is so goddamn funny that you asked me that, G-Man. Because I was just talking to multiple people in DMs about adding that. Like, are you reading my mind right now, Johnson? Like literally, I was just talking to Tarkin, I was just talking to Lama, and I was talking to another person I can't remember right now. But we were talking about how civilian evacuations need to have more, what's the word? They need to be more beneficial in terms of your play style. Like, I feel like the frequency of them leaving, the amount of civvies that we have coming is good, but we need a way of transporting them when they're further out in larger zones faster. So that was something that I was actually talking to some excuse me, I was talking to some of the people on the Discord about DMs about was adding potentially a module on the admin center. And right now, we just probably do a dirty block out where it's like a little square box that just like a little thrown together garage, and it would just send trucks out. And what they would do is that the system would grab clusters of buildings that are empty, and then they'd park the car there. And then the civilians would go to the car would fill, and then the car would come down to the admin center, deposit them, and then at that point, you're bringing like 20, 30, 40 people in one go in these like filled like transport trucks. So that was actually something that I was like actually debating with some people in the community in terms of is this needed right now. One of the other things that we were going back and forth was the aspect of civilians need to give you more money for their evacuations because you don't make enough. We need to make that number configurable for people that want to play custom games and get more out of the system. And actually, you know what? I have a bullet point list that I was going over with people in DMs. Let me see if I can pull that up. Let's see. So here's my four bullets that we kind of like were able to nail it down to in terms of basically they were simple and easy to kind of get the most out of the systems. So one was making them smarter about their destination choices so that if a helicopter is going to be filled by half the mob, only half the mob goes to the helicopter. And the other half of the mob goes to another helicopter that they know has free occupancy for them. Instead of getting to the helicopter, half of them, two or three of them, maybe even 90% of them can't go on. And then the helicopter leaves, and then they run to another helicopter, or they sit around and wait. So that was one of the things that me and some of the cats had earmarked as like a quick fix to try and squeak in next week. One of the other quick fixes was income, is basically making it to where you can adjust it in terms of the income they make, and that one person was making the argument that civilians are 3 times more, what's the word? If they're worth 3 times as much dead than they are alive. In terms of basically like how we reward people for evacuations isn't enough to justify the expenditure. It just makes you feel, it gives you those butterflies and those warm and fuzzies, but it's not enough to like if you're playing a good guy playthrough, then you're going to do that. But if you're playing it from a resource money standpoint, there's no real incentive besides just going out, killing the infected, and letting the civilians burn. So that's something that basically we need to like adjust behind the scenes going into early this week that I'm going to be sneaking in. Then the third one was changing the income from socks because some people wanted to turn off the socks. I guess. Well, let's see. They wanted to turn down socks and bounties to 0, but something I went to investigate some stuff with that. Another thing was basically increasing the sizes of cages to 4 to 8 people, so you don't have to build one cage for each individual person, because that was an idea that originated from the like years ago, and it has not scaled well because you figure one cage for every civilian just doesn't. It's just not feasible. That's a lot of buildings we're placing down. So one thing that we were looking at we were looking at Fear the Walking Dead for the first season for inspiration, and I was doing some research there. And I was like, well, why don't we just do what they did when they put Strand and that other kid in the cage? Is like the U.S. military in that show basically had these like cell blocks where you just build like a 3x3 or 4x4 cage, or even a 5x5, and there's 10 people in those cages. So you place down one of those little like, so basically we take the assets from the cages and we make it to where like instead of placing down individual units, you're placing down like a 3x3 or a 4x4 or a 5x5, and then that way there's 10 cages. So you're not placing down 10 cages anymore, because then the problem is that once we get to the point of adding in the DNA research tree, we have a bunch of systems that are just turned off, like asystematic carriers. The infection is not really a threat right now. We turned that all down because we were like, we're writing off more than we can chew. Let's come back to these systems when we get to the DNA research tree, and let's make it to where the virus is actually an enemy of you and the people. Like if you're evacuating from zones that have any level of contagion, those people, you're going to have a much higher probability of those people, basically, if you don't have infection scanners, getting to your carrier and scuttling it. So the idea was is that, well, we could do these cages so people can farm DNA off of them long term for the DNA research trees that we're going to be adding, and then on top of that for the shutter rounds, and that kind of deal. So that's the general idea. We were just kind of going in that we kind of agreed on those four bullet points. I'm totally open for other criticisms or suggestions people might have that they feel we need to do for the evacuations here. If you guys have anything else that you feel that we should consider, I can't guarantee it's going to be put in, but I will hear you and I will think about what you say, and then basically mull it over and see if we can do it now or do it in the future. So, if anyone does have any suggestions or for the evacuation or anything else, I'm totally ears. I'll write it down now, and then I'll go back to it and think about it over the weekend and figure out what we can and cannot do, and then get back to you guys on that. Um, Let me see if there's anything else that we have for questions. Can you make more groups run at once? I've only noticed one group of civilians run to the end. Extra. What do you mean by that? Because realistically, we allow 30 mobs at any given time, G-Man, to run around the map. So that means at the very base minimum. Oh, are you talking about when you're telling civilians to leave a zone and go to another zone, not when they're evacuating from the current zone, when they're exiting? That's all virtual. What you see in the world is not representative of the actual amount of people that are being transferred in the zones. That was just what we put in there for immersion because we could never actually spawn 1,000 plus people running between the zone. I mean, maybe we could via Niagara simulation, but then we couldn't interact with them via collision in terms of like the infected couldn't really hit them because there'd be artificial limits. So we were like, okay, let's put some people in that look like they're fleeing and panicking. But 99% of the population transfer happens behind the scenes. Let's see what we got here. Can we get sorry, I pronounced that wrong. Can we get new sources of income for sending out like workers, doctors, cooks, etc., for delivering supplies to civilians with game rep and support from the government, local civilian population? I feel like you got that idea from that game that came out yesterday. Have you been playing that new zombie game? The one that came out on Steam yesterday? I saw Splattercat. Or was it? Someone was playing it on my YouTube list. It was like that new zombie game where like basically you like choose a province that you're in the world. Yeah, I was watching them and I was actually gonna buy that game for reference. Let's see what they're doing for their infection and their like it's for similar games. So you figure, yeah, that one. Let me think about that for a second. Can we put something up? So when you say sources of income, do you really mean just reputation, or do you mean like actual cash? I would go in the route of reputation because I've wanted to make it to where Circ's funding is from the government. It's from the Senate. It's from Congress. It's like it's a government agency. So I've wanted to make it like XCOM, where you get it from your overseers, the people that run like the big wigs in Washington, based off of your progress. And if you were to have that level of engagement with civilians, I would make it just purely based off of income. Sorry, income, fuck, reputation, because it'd be the example of like when we deliver supplies like Gaza or something like that, like or like something like that, where it's like it's basically like it's just universal supplies they just need to live and eat. I don't want to get too much in the nitty gritty of food, water, and all that because then you get into a lot of very, very like crazy complex game when it gets to that point. I'm trying to keep it universal. Excuse me, where a supply is just whatever they need to operate and live, whether it be building, eating, drinking, like that kind of stuff, or just upgrading their colonies. Now, what you're suggesting, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I feel like that would be better suited when we get to the factions later in the future. Because there's a lot of ideas that were left on the wasteland. Like there was a previous AMA like a while ago when we were talking about having it to where like the civilian groups will give you missions, and then that way you can give them missions, you can give them orders. That way there was more purpose to having them. But it's one of those things where it's like if we do that now, that pushes off co-op even more, and it kind of bloats our roadmap. So that's why I'm almost conscious of adding something that it's a good idea. I love the fucking idea. I'm just conscious about delaying co-op again, where it's like I've already cut one thing out, the operator, and moved it back to 1.4 because of that. So it was just kind of like, you get what I'm saying? Like I what you're suggesting is something that I want to do in the confines of universal resources or supply, but I don't want to do it now until we can show the game is like everything that we originally promised in the 1.3 roadmap. And then at that point, I can kind of like chill, relax, and plan out the future of the game in terms of other features to push post co op. At this point, it seems like everything is contingent on just getting the game to a point for co op. And then at that point, we're gonna start adding on the stuff that are on our wish list, the things that we've wanted to do. We've held off on it because we don't want to bloat the roadmap anymore. Let me see. What else do we have here for questions? What's on YouTube? Any questions from YouTube? The M1 tank is going to be added soon, Coruscant Raven. Right now, we're working on some bugs and some fixing some jank up. And then at that point, we're going to be working on the advanced vehicle AI. And then one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to put the Abrams in and the Ajax in with that new advanced vehicle AI. We'll test it out with you guys, and then once everyone's happy, we'll roll out and convert the rest of the vehicles. So we want to add one treaded vehicle, and then we want to add one conventional 4x4, all wheel like vehicle like the Hummer. Um, let's see. What else do we have here for question? More lightings and decorations aren't in the cards right now. That's something else that we're going to be looking into. I would probably say towards the end of the year is when we plan on maybe adding some more decorations and more like cosmetic items to the game in terms of things that Struck can build. Let's see. Different types of people to evacuate. Oh, I think They Are Billions has that. They have like different not They Are Billions. They have different infected types like that. Well, he asked maybe incorporate different types of people to evacuate and prioritize children, civvies, or women, Titanic style. Let me get back to you on that one. I am honestly not sure about that level because that would add a lot in terms of the overhead. In terms like those are all new models that have to be made. We already have a very limited tool set of human being characters right now for the civilians. We want to add more going into the future. That's something that's kind of more of a wish list item. Or we're just Michael and are working on like the animation polish and whatnot. So hold off on that one for right now. It's not a bad idea. That might be something that's more for modders to do. Or they could do something like that. But I don't know. And that's something we should put in there just yet. Let's see what we have there for questions. We'll jump over to YouTube and I'll jump over to Discord, and then we'll wrap it up in the next 12 minutes. So was it Cole Orton asked the question about adding more naval ships or naval guns. Right now, I don't. Oh, Operation Cobalt. What is that? I'm going to look that up on YouTube after this. I should know what Operation Cobalt is because I love The Walking Dead. I don't remember that. But essentially, when it comes down to adding more naval ships, we're using the LCAC and the LHA-6 as a test bed to see just how well we can do it, how hard it is, and then we're going to go from there. Right now, our plan is just to keep it to those two for the immediate future, and then at that point, come back to it after probably 3 to 6 months to see how has it grown, what issues have we ran into. Because if we could get those two vehicles cemented and polished and very nice, future vehicles are very easier because they're just cosmetic changes, and then we add in weapons and stuff that can fire based off of ranges like the mortar. So that way you can have bombardment and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where like we're thinking about it, but we want to take it in baby steps right now. So I'm not saying we're not going to do it, but just hold off on that for right now. Um, so lighting decorations and blinking colored lights. Let me look at this. So your concern is that basically the circ bases are so goddamn dark, right, G-Man? Because even at nighttime, it's like a horror show. Yeah, because all we have is that stupid spotlight. Let me take this to my visual artist. I'm gonna have a meeting with one of my artists later in the week and see if there's anything else that can be done and that's been added in 5.32 or coming down in 5.4 that we could use. Right now, we're trying to avoid using lights, but I'm wondering if there's something else we could do with the fog of war or the post process to boost the efficiency of lights in those areas where you have circ bases without inflating the cost of like rendering. So let me talk to some of my technical artists and see what we can do about that. Because I completely agree with you. I've been playing the game quite a bit for trailers and just testing the builds, and it's just like I'm just used to it, but we do need better lighting. Like there needs to be some kind of like yeah, obviously it doesn't help the AI, it helps us, the people playing the game. But it's like it just helps us play the game better, really. Okay, what else do we have for questions? So a person on YouTube asked about UAVs. Right now, our UAV is a scout helicopter. If we're uh yeah, like we talked about adding like a Harrier or stuff to like the LHA 6, but that's more of a wish list item for this year that we don't even know if we're gonna get to because we want to add a Harrier or assault drone, but why not? Realistically, the VTOL is gonna be our first test. Like I keep saying this, but we like to test the concept of a unit, a game that is that different than everything else we've ever done by adding in one type of that unit and then seeing just basically how it replicates over time in terms of like how does it play, what kind of technical issues did we run into, and X, Y, and Z. So by all intents and purposes, the VTOL will be our first test jet because on paper it's kind of a jet. Like it folds down and then it turns into that jet mode. So we'll use that as a test bed to kind of figure out what would it entail if we had a unit that always did this, and what kind of AI would they need to be able to not crash into stuff half the time. But it's one of those things where like we know people want more toys to play with, like UAVs, like Predator drones, like a Harrier that can take off from the LHA 6s. We know people want Navy ships, but it's about just taking it in bite-sized chunks based off of like we're a 5-man team, basically 1.5 programmers, because I only get to program half of my time besides just doing admin and just hunting down bugs reports and playtesting builds and everything else. So just keep in mind that like we're gonna keep on working on this until it gets to the point where it's a gem. It's just it might be a slow road at times. Just be a little bit patient with us, but we will figure these things out. And slowly but surely, and my hope is we're releasing co-op sooner rather than later. We'll be able to increase the team size, so then at that point, we can basically deliver on more content quicker. So post co-op, we're able to actually get more content out. That's the goal. So I'm just kind of dynamic based off of everyone's jobs because people on the team work day jobs. So their job schedules, what we have coming in, just kind of adapted based off of that on a month-to-month basis. Um, okay, so let's see for questions. What else do we have here? So adding in broken down cars on the road whenever I'm playing, I feel like the roads are way too clear. For a city like this, there should be cars everywhere. Yes. So that kind of goes into something that I've talked about in the past, where I've wanted to add a system for, I wanted to remove all the debris in the city. And then I wanted to basically add it to where it would build up and cluster based off of the chaos level in that zone. So like a red zone would have like a lot of traffic jams and car crashes and things on fire and dead people. And those would be like preset Lego pieces per se that would spawn in the world dynamically, similar to like when you play Diablo and every dungeon's different, is the idea. So that way, like, what is going to devolve in your world is based off of the policy you take. So if you quarantine off Chelsea into basically like one island, only that island's going to be World War III in terms of its visible presence, and the rest of the world will be pristine and clean. But then if she bleeds out into a zone after 10 to 20 minutes, that zone will start to deteriorate and have more car crashes and things that you might have to clear or will affect your logistic ability to deploy into that zone. Because then you have to like worry about like, oh, these cars are blocking my way, these are blocking line of sight, this road is now closed off, so now I have to go around. Um, those are all things that basically are on my wish list. It's like one of those things where I don't know, like it's on my TBD, it's on my wish list. I don't know the best time to implement it based off of all the things that are going on right now. So it just kind of comes down to like, I fucking love your idea. Like hats off to basically that idea is good and I love it. And I've been thinking about that for like the better part of a year. It's just finding the right time to implement it. It doesn't affect the rest of the roadmap. So like if you look at it, if you look at our roadmap on like our website, 1.4 and TBD are just growing every couple of weeks. Where it's like I'm putting stuff on there that when we get to 1.4, we'll finish up what's in there, and then 1.5 will be what we pull down from the TBD list. Okay, so what else do we have for questions? Let's see. So we don't have the power poles letting off lights because that was causing performance issues in the engine. The original idea was to have the city light itself, but then doing that was basically adding like if you the problem is that because our world is so large, like if we had like a fixed perspective game like Spider-Man or like the Division, it'd be easier to control what you can see. So it's easier to basically unload entire sections of the world when nothing's going on. But the problem with Cepheus is because we have everything loaded in at all times, all collision and all data is being like calculated at the same time. That it's like I feel like when we get to San Francisco North and we add that, we're going to have a paradigm shift, like a change in how we handle loading and unloading data, so that way we can have like more object density in the world. So Unreal Engine does have a system like LOD, but let me run a situation like an example through you. Is that you figure like how it works with just how large our world is that you figure because we're an RTS game and there's not that many engines that are just facilitated and made for an RTS game, we've found that if we don't keep collision loaded for the object over in Narnia on Angel Island and you're in Treasure Island, people will clip into those objects. And then at that point, when you move your camera back over there, now you have entire colonies building inside of a structure, or you have like other crazy stuff going on. So the issue is that we're keeping the collision in the world loaded at all times, just to basically keep it essentially fluid. I guess is the simplest way of saying it. Whereas like we could run real world like things simulations of things that are going on, like the civilian camps are being built. They're going around and they're foraging and stuff like that. And they're able to actually accurately pathfind around the world. Yes, but that doesn't our performance issues aren't really related to that, but more of the int views and the CPU hit. Because you figure historically our project we don't have issues really with draw calls. We don't have issues really with poly count. Our issue is just the sheer amount of assets that we have to keep loaded because of their collision is loaded, that basically it just kind of nukes the engine. And then the engine does not handle overlapping dynamic lights that well. Because we have a sun, and then we have lights and the street lights, and then we have circ lights, all of those can overlap, and that causes a cascade effect where it's multiplicative in terms of the cost that it drains on your performance on your hardware. So once you have the sun, and then you add in the light, those two are touching each other. Basically, now you're getting, and then you factor in the moon also presents light, unless we made the moon dark, which you don't want us to do, because then you would have no light during the day. So the issue is basically like that, where our dynamic lights all overlap over each other, and then it causes like the engine. It doesn't explode per se, but it explodes on your performance. Because then you like if you want to test, go into the game, turn on a bunch of flashlights, and face them towards each other. Watch your frame rate dip. Because you figure that's why the only reason that we really allow to basically use dynamic flashlights right now that can sometimes overlap are the cars and the people, because it's really hard to get them to overlap to a serious degree. But yeah, no, like it's banging. So you figure that's something technically we need to kind of figure out, and maybe I put him on that before he works on the C5 Galaxy. Maybe I have him look into a serious lighting solution, whether it be faking it with emissives, post-process hacks, or basically just something we can do to kind of enhance the lighting of the game at night. Or maybe we just need to increase. Well, no, I kind of want to. I like having the game's nights dark. Because it gives an incentive for the night vision. If I had my way, I'd probably make the nights darker, so that, and I would probably make it to where the moon doesn't always come out. And then you would actually have to rely on like flares and flashlights, night vision, um, like things that actually make it to where going out at night is not just a cakewalk. Like there are repercussions to going out, like in Dead by Daylight, where you have those monsters that get stronger and they come out more, and then you have the ones that hunt you. Mechanical, we imagine Chelsea's guard is going to kind of operate like, where she's going to kind of be like Salazar's right hand from like Resident Evil 4, where he'll come out and will hunt you if you're pissing her off too much. So let me have a meeting with my technical artist tomorrow or on Monday to see what in the hell is the compromise. Because you figure we need to stop putting that off. So before he works on the C5 Galaxy, I'm gonna have him finish doing his R&D on the flickering texture thingy that Splattercat mentioned, and then before he works on the C5 Galaxy, I'm gonna have him get together with me, and we're going to see what we can look into for handling lighting in the game, finding a better approach. Because I mean, you guys are seeing it, everyone's seeing it. So if I'm not gonna fix it, it's like I'm blind at this point. Um. Let me just see what other questions we have. Oh, thanks, JT. I'm glad you just got the game and you're having fun. Like, I always love that. People just like join the Discord or the YouTube and they're like, this game is so fucking fun. Like, that's like the best thing you could hear as a developer when someone says that. And it's like, okay, I did my job. I mean, I still have stuff to do, but I'm glad I was able to make someone's day that happy where they were like, this is the shit. Let's see. What do you mean by that, Mana? I can never say your name correctly, so I'm just gonna call you Mana correctly from now on. Lama Man. I'm just gonna call you Mana. Fuck it. So, Mana, can you elaborate on what you mean by like identifying people? Are you talking about the DNA scanners, or are you talking about something else? So what you're suggesting, Sir Commanding Officer, is what we already have on the roadmap under world events. That would be coming in 1.4, but we want to add roughly about 40 to 50 world events, like what you're suggesting, where it's like a government helicopter crashes. Um, there's a civilian faction that needs your help. oh god, I just fucking quoted Preston Garvey from Fallout 4. But you get the point. Basically, like something along the lines of basically like a world event that you can go in, you can help, you get money, you get reputation sometimes, and it kind of brings makes the world seem more alive. I can never quote Fallout 4 ever again. God damn it. Um, how would that look in gameplay though? Is the question, Mana. That seems like a lot of layers to add on top of what we already have right now. Like, what would that look like in terms of interaction? Well, she writes that map editor is not coming to 2025. That'd be after the campaign. That would be on the precipice of releasing either early access. Like, yeah, that would be like we're done. The game is like solidified and all right. The campaign, the co-op, the horde operator stuff is in, and then we push it out for like 1.0. That would be the best time to do the map editor because then you guys everything's solidified, everything's final, and nothing's gonna be constantly changing where people have to recompile their stuff every other week because we're changing the engine or something else screws them over. Uh, Electricity requiring base buildings. When you're traveling, they don't have to overlap each other. Maybe in the electrical gates have lights. What you're saying makes complete sense. Dark Marky 8910 for lights, but it's a technical thing in the engine. Let me get together with my artist. Well, he might be on tonight. He might be listening right now, actually. So you figure, regardless, let me get together with my technical artist in the next 24 to 48 hours, and then I'll put a ping up if we can figure out something, or just to announce that we're kind of like R&Ding it. But first, I want to see what he comes up with the texture flickering issue, and then that'll be the next thing I give to him before he jumps back on the C5 Galaxy rigging. Okay. So let's see here. Imagine someone runs at you in the darkness. You probably don't know at first if they're human or zombie. So what to do could depend on your ROE or martial law settings. Do you shoot or do you wait till they get closer or try to ID them better? Let me think about that because that could really, really quickly devolve into overcomplicating the gameplay. I get what you're going for, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I have to think about that. That's something I have to basically sleep on and like think is it actually needed or is that something better to save for modding? Let me put that in my reports channel because I have to seriously think about that for a couple of days. So what she basically said was like imagine someone running at you in the darkness. You probably don't know at first if they're a human or a zombie. So then what to do could depend on your ROE or martial law setting. Do you shoot or just wait until they get closer to try and ID them better, etc.? And I just feel like that would add so many layers to gameplay that it might be over complicated. I don't know. I would have to seriously sit here and just think about that. Um, so here's Dark Mark 8910 said you can have a base of basic walls besides circling the barracks. It's dark. You upgrade the walls. The walls have small lights. So illuminate what's directly below them. The gates might illuminate what's further in front of them. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, no, just wait. Just like what you're saying, 100% agree with you. I would have already done it right now. But the problem is, we were worried about the performance. So give me a couple of days to figure that out with the retreat. We'll go from there. Okay, what else do we got here? I think what she's getting at is that you could see them on your camera, but your circ wouldn't know if they're infected or not. So then they would have to determine if they're infected or not infected while they're running at him based off of like either something that they give, like a scanner, or to shoot them based off of ROE. But I just feel like that would just make the gameplay too complicated. I need to like think about that. So Tempesta on YouTube asked the question about having the Abrams have a flamethrower. That's a really good fucking idea. Why didn't I let him think about that? Hold on, I'm writing that down. Wait, does the Bradley normally have infantry firing ports? I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was just the idea was its transportation. Can you show me what that looks like? Oh yeah, okay, no, we started like an hour and 9 minutes ago. Maybe I need to set another time that basically more people can come to. So like there was like 30 people that said they wanted to come today on like the RSVP, but then like no one the big group didn't come. So it was like sad panda. I feel like I need to like find a new time and day. And then Michael wants to start coming to these too because he works at Best Buy right now. So he can't even come to these anymore. So I feel like I'm gonna end up changing the day and the time to just another day entirely so we can try and get more people. Maybe something later in the day so that way people in the UK. Well, yeah, because people in the UK are fucked from this time. I don't know. I'm gonna have to theory craft that and look at our demographics on our Discord to see maybe like yeah, I don't know. So for additional lighting, so I'm gonna say this now and I say it so many times. I would not judge the game based off of its visual presentation right now. My biggest concern has always been gameplay over visuals, and I always fight my artists on this because they always try to make the game as pretty as possible. I just want the game to play well, be performant. One thing we're going to be doing as we get closer to like a Circuit of the Doctrines revamp and just starting to leave early access is we're going to start to see that change, and we're going to be pushing more of the visuals where the idea is that like we're trying to make it look more sexy, like we're adding in better explosion effects, we're adding in better post process, like that kind of stuff. So for the question on YouTube, for Mono, I yes, absolutely. Like literally, they've been fighting me for months, years on this. But again, it would take twice as long to implement content if we were so as worried about cosmetics or just getting the gameplay aspects in. So it's like that's something that I'm kind of saving for like the end of our early access tenure. Yeah, I know. I mean, so it's good in some cases. Like it's really good in some cases, but there's a lot of areas where there's a lot of room for improvement, especially the goddamn airstrikes. And then some of the circuit units could use a facelift. Their assault is, and the assault's the only one that's really final at this point for the ground units. The civilians are final. We just need to add more variations, probably about 10 or so. And then the infected aren't final. We need to basically redo them with a proper character artist in the future based off of them being more grotesque and horror-ish. I showed the concepts for that in a podcast slash monthly AMA a couple months or weeks ago actually. So you guys can scroll through one of the old YouTube videos to see like what I'm talking about in terms of like the concepts. Um, but just know that the visuals now are going to change, guaranteed. Because I'm not happy with them, and especially my technical artist is not happy with them. If he had his way, it looked like goddamn crisis. So it's one of those things where it's a constant ho heave in terms of time and X, Y, and Z. Um, let's see. What else do we got? What is the difference between the idea and setting the order for unconfirmed infected to shoot on sight? I mean, are you talking about on the administration structure, Mark? The civilian admin structure? Oh, okay. She got it. Um, okay, let me see if there's any more questions on YouTube. Okay, well, that's good. There's no other questions on YouTube. Let's see if we have anything on Discord. Okay, I mean, back to that. I mean, that basically means that if you don't have a DNA scanner set up, they're going to shoot everyone. So the civilians will show up at the admin center, and then your circuit units will shoot them. There's no robots in our universe, so I don't even have an answer for that. I mean, I guess technically a Fenrir, but they would just attack the. I mean, that's way speculative, so I don't even. They would attack them. That's what I'm gonna say. You know what they do is they assimilate biological. They don't mechanical. They can't do anything with. They're not like the Zerg from StarCraft 2, where like they'll do like Stukov's tanks or like the hybrid units that they infect like the command center. They don't do that. They'll like build biomass on the structure, but it doesn't change the attributes of the structure. It doesn't like give them the ability to like take control of a vehicle. It's just they're making their atmosphere like what they're used to because the Pengu virus is alien in origin, where it's like it's from a meteor that crashed in I think it was Antarctica. Yeah. Spoilers for anyone that's read the book or watched the mythology. There's a book. It's on Steam. It's the book is what we're going to be covering in the campaign. So like here, I'll find it. Like basically, we're going to be going one to one with the book with some deviation here and there because some things don't always translate from that media. Yeah, that one, the novelization. I mean, we don't really plan on adding those, so I don't really have a question for that one, Dark Mark. Let's see, I don't really have that other really questions, so I guess I'll start to wrap it up. Unless we'll get one more question, and then we're gonna wrap it up at that point. Okay. Yeah, the only ones that are getting robots or any kind of mechanical stuff is gonna be Federer. Let me read that again. Mono has an interesting question on YouTube. Let me pull this over to my main monitor so I can read it better. He asked, is there any potential for a mode where you have to keep as many civilians alive in a big area? No evacuation, but just scanning, mitigation, etc. Maybe bonuses will be civilian engineers, soldiers, and others. That's a really interesting idea. Huh. I'm like perplexed by this question right now because it's interesting because the focus has always been on evacuation. People have always asked for evacuation, but they never asked for that. Oh. So basically, your thing would be is that like you take a policy in gameplay where you don't you want to help them, but you don't want them on your ship. So basically, you're just like, I'm just gonna keep these people quarantined and try and keep them as live as possible, like making like a colony, like in The Walking Dead. But there's no real end goal of like evacuation. You're just trying to like in prototype. Like in prototype, they're not evacuating anyone. They're just keeping them on the mainland and putting them in the green, yellow, and red zones. They've just closed off the island and just been like, maybe we'll be able to stop them or not. Is that basically what you're asking for in a situation like prototype? If I'm understanding correctly, Mono? I think so. I don't know if he's still there, but huh. Let me think about that. That's an interesting idea. I'm gonna just save that. Can I copy that? Oh, stupid YouTube interface. Let me copy that over to my channel, put that under a notes section, and I'll come back to that in the future. Because I mean, that could be another interesting way of playing the game. But I guess the problem is what would be the incentive to do that? How do you get rewarded for basically keeping the people in one location? Because the idea of evacuation is deny Chelsea people and resources. So you're arguing, G-Man, that if you're able to put a zone under your domain, your control, your ability to keep that populace alive dictates to tick money income. So you're arguing for like another way of making a viable Cirque playthrough is evacuations, fighting Chelsea or hunting her down and killing her. Well, really, actually, no, it would be evacuations, it would be killing infected, it would be bounties, it'd be socks, and then you're arguing for basically the fifth one would be almost like a keep people alive thing kind of deal, where it's like is what you're basically saying. But instead of evacuating them, oh, I don't know about that. I'm all for giving people more ways to play the game though. So 'cause I want to make the game as freeform as possible, but I gotta think about that. Plus, I'm kind of waiting for you guys to finish typing so I can see the conclusions you guys are drawing. Well, pandemic mode is by all intents and purposes the open world survival mode. I mean, pandemic mode is whatever is fun to you is what you play. If fun to you is hunting the infection, do it. If fun to you is evacuating and just dicking Chelsea in the corner, do it. So, pandemic is all about choices. Well, the campaign is more about, well, it's a lot more. They don't have as many options as you guys have in terms of like what we've given you for like a lot of the stuff in pandemic is not canon. Hmm. So, like, are you suggesting that it would be like you build a civilian administration structure instead of turning on civilian evacuation, you turn on like another option, and that option would be basically just to like based off of the population in that zone, you would start making money every minute, every 30 seconds or whatever. Because it would still be from the civilian administration tent. You'd have to build that, and then that would kick off. You toggle either you're evacuating from that zone or you're basically taking management of that zone, like a governor. And the governor would be more like, okay, uh, based off of the population, every tick in this zone, I will be getting money. And as basically that number decreases, you make less money. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I was trying to hear everyone's stance on it and opinions, so that way I can go back and just mull it over. Huh. Well, in the chat on Discord, they're basically talking about basically having like some kind of lockdown road, is what they're calling it, instead of evacuation. Now you could oh well, yeah, actually she's right. It used to be where basically you would control a zone, but it wasn't. Was it scaled by population? That was like 3 years ago. I honestly don't remember. I'm gonna have to do some research 'cause I honestly don't remember. I have the old build, so I can just roll back on Steam. Worst case, if there's no good YouTube coverage. But I think you're right, Mana. But it's to say that some of the old ideas weren't necessarily bad; they just needed refinement. It's one of those things where it's like, hmm. For YouTube, what Coaster, just message me on Discord what you do for your portfolio or whatever, or if you're looking to help out, and then I'll just keep it saved. Well, we're starting to look for more people because right now we're trying to keep it to a limited size because our income isn't the greatest, but it'll get larger and bigger as we get closer to co-op and beyond. So we're planning on scaling up regardless of that point. Um, I think you're right. Not mana. Let me copy that in, and it will be fixed on Monday now because I wasn't even aware of that. Okay, King9, consider it fixed on Monday's patch. All right, so then let's see. So basically, what you're saying is you guys want the ability in pandemic mode to be able to just run your own colonies for civilians, still wage war against the infected, but be able to like have it to where like instead of being rewarded like so instead of having, if I'm understanding correctly, instead of having to like push out the socks and build and make the outpost, you guys just want to take dominionship over like 3 or 4 provinces, protect those people, get income from keeping those people alive, and then exert your power in local regions, expand your dominance if there's no infected or dynamic civilian groups that hate your guts, and ultimately use that. And then use the socks as more of like a supplemental income to that approach or play style. Where it's like instead of directly pushing every sock, you want to be able to just keep the people alive and not worry about the evacuation stuff. Hmm. Well, we talked about that earlier, Mana. I went over the list that I was talking to you and Tarkin about. Is basically just adding cages that are 4 or 5 by 5. So that's already going to be snuck in this week. So that's going to be a non-issue. Is that we're going to be adding evacuation cages, or sorry, the civilian management cages that are like 5 by 5 or something. So that way you can fit 10 people in them. Um, with think Well, keep in mind for co-op Kanon, the idea is that you're playing a Cirque. Everyone else is a sub-faction, like the police, like the anarchists. It's like Stellaris co-op, where everyone's working as Cirque. They share resources, or they can separate and divvy it up like a D&D leader, where it'd be like, okay, You're in charge of this northern command. You're in charge of southern, or you're in charge of logistics. You're in charge of whatever, like building or attacking. So that's the idea. Is like it's four players to basically just kind of take command of the initial starting circ and just play it out in terms of however you want to play it in that session. PvP is more of a wish list item. We want to do it, but that's like way down the pipe. First, we got to see how the co-op goes, see how it scales, see how we do the balance, and then from there, go from there. What is Manor saying? I wonder if there's some sort of scale confusion going on with the holding areas, where the civilian buildings are proportionately scaled down. The holding areas are a bit more realistically sized. What do you mean by that? Are you saying to increase the size of the holding areas? Do they hold more people? Yes, you're correct. We did not build the skyscrapers to one scale because then the map would be ginormous. Okay, actually, no, let me take that back. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So the buildings and the circ stuff are all to scale, but we didn't build the city to scale, if that makes sense. Like where there'd be 4 blocks, we did 2 blocks for Treasure Island, as an example. That's what I meant. I'm so sorry. I explained that completely wrong. So yes, a skyscraper is relative to it should be relative to the correct human sizing of the floors or the doors. I'm sorry. I misunderstood your question. Um so for your question of operator versus operator or player faction versus player faction. I don't have any. I really don't have any notes. Anything to say on the PvP just yet. That's way far out. I will just say that the goal is to basically have it to where Cirque can have multiple operators like playing on the ground as well as basically in the RTS. So K9, I would put that in the CP forums and document it, and put your save file up. Pretty please. Um, So I guess the question comes down for the civilian evacuation is: do you guys feel that the cages and the holding areas need to be larger? The cages have already been agreed to be larger, but are you guys also trying to say the holding areas should be larger? We've already agreed that we need to have vehicles or transport in larger zones from the admin zone to ferry larger civilian groups to the admin zone. The admin zone as an exception point is not going away, because that's basically the entry point into your base, your compound, however you're building. So the idea would be is that you'd have like a garage or something that you would build on the admin zone, and then that car would go out and grab people around the city in that zone, bring them to the admin zone to be processed, and then from that admin zone, they would go to A, B, C, D, E, F, G based off of your rules. Huh. Huh. Well, that's why I'm saying K9 is we want to add 5x5 cages or something like that. So instead of being able to build one-offs, I think we need to make the conversion for the cages to be basically like larger. So Lama is saying, or Mana is saying, you can't really transfer people into a safe zone because holding area isn't holding area because they don't have people. Okay, nine. What kind of output are you getting in your evacuation playthroughs for 6 helipads? Like, how many people are you evacuating, say, in 10 to 20 minutes of the game? In your play session? Because I'm assuming you're sending everyone in the world to one zone. Like, so you're building a bunch of NPCs and of civilian admin structures in like 3 or 4 provinces. You're sending everyone to the back line to that helipad zone. And then you're basically saying this is the central point. From here, everyone leaves. What kind of output would you say you're getting right now? And what would you like to see in that same span of time? Well, yeah, man, but that could be fixed. I didn't even know that the performance was taking when they leave cross zone. That's something that if you could document, we'll fix it. Or if I can recreate it myself later tonight. I know, but I was doing that the other day and I didn't get performance hits. Maybe I wasn't noticing because all I did was I bullied Chelsea on the Western Treasure Island, and then I blew both bridges, left a team over there to keep egging her because I'm a dick, and then basically just evacuated Treasure Island down the center, and then had everyone going to the big military base at that naval yard. And like when I was doing it, I wasn't running into any issues, but I need to see like if you guys can record yourself playing, that might be even better. And then if you talk over it and send me that, I'll watch it and be like, okay, they're doing these things different than what I'm doing, which is why these issues are presenting themselves. And that way I can analyze how you guys are playing, break it down, and solve the underlying problems. So like if you guys do that, you record commentary and you send that to me, I will watch it. And I'll basically be able to fully understand where your concerns are at the per split moment, make time code annotations, send that off to the programmers or do what I can fix, and go from there. So that might be the best way of solving some of these more complicated matters. So that way we're not going back and forth and trying to explain it in text. You just play the game, record it, and talk, or talk post edit. Um, but in your example, Canine, what kind of output did you get in 2 hours? Did you get everyone that you wanted? Did you get half? Did you get a quarter? Like, were you having a lot of issues of helicopters leaving that weren't full? Oh, I see what you're saying, man. That makes sense. Okay, I get what you were saying. So that okay, all right, all right. Now I understand what you're getting at. Huh. How many zones did you have cross world moving, K9? If you had to guess. Five, six, eight. So you did. How are you? Well, you were I'm trying to understand how were you evacuating everyone from that one zone then? Oh, and how exactly is it breaking for you? It just stops working because that's something that definitely needs to be documented in some case, manner, or form, if you guys could. I'm gonna take it. I'm obviously taking some notes. What you guys are saying. The tents go up. So you're telling me the holding tents fill up and they never leave? I need that save file. I definitely need that save file with them broken. Like so, everything you just suggested, everything you just said, I need that in one save file if you can. With it, like everything you listing out right now with that save file and a forms thread, and I'll make sure that's the first thing we look into on Monday. Ooh, hiccups. Oh, okay. So I think there's like a YouTuber in the channel that's like, oh yeah, we're just waiting for co-op, and then we're gonna be making a shit ton of content for your game. No pressure. That's all I say to that comment. Tempesta. Well, Canine, can you write everything that you're right, every bug that you're running with the civilian evacuation stuff into a forums thread and tag me when you're done? And the same thing with you, Mana. If you guys write something up today, please tag me in the thread, and then I'm gonna see to it that we fix that going into. Thank you so much, because that is a huge fuck up. Why it's breaking, I have no idea. So we're gonna have to just get those save files, tear them apart, and figure out what is going on logically. Because it's some kind of logic bug. It might be, I don't know if it's related to what Manor's saying about the cross moving issue. I don't know. I've never seen it happen yet, is the problem. Because I play differently than you guys. So it's like I need to we need to get into the nitty gritty of your save files and figure out what the hell's going on. Same thing for you, G-Man, is drop that in their thread. Whatever thread K9 or Manor makes, put that in there as well. And we'll look into it. So I'm going to be writing down some notes here, is that the cross zone movement needs to be looked into. And then I'm gonna actually have a meeting with my programmer tonight now. So we're gonna move that up a couple days. Let me write some notes. Some of the notes that I had kind of put in there for early week were like some docking issues, some graphics needed to be changed out. The Blue Crest Estates, I got that one down. Some pods are bugging out where they don't always attack you sometimes. And then let's see. And then it was just the LCAC issue. But the LCAC issue should wait. It was just the issue of like sometimes they just leave on top of each other. I think this is more pressing than the LCAC issue. So I'll move this up to the top. That's fine. We can do that, Kanan. Yeah, we always join Dark Realm or whatever, and then you can just show me whatever's going on Discord. Anyone else that wants to is welcome to come as well. That way it'd just be more streamlined. Sorry, I was like reviewing my notes, so I didn't even like see what you were typing until like a second ago. Can I have a lot now? Okay, so is there anything else anyone wants to bring out going into this week that they want me to consider for things to fix? Now, when it comes to like the new way of playing Cirque, that's off the table right now. Good idea, not enough time to implement it right now. That would like take our perfectly arranged table that still has a lot of shit all over it and just throw it on the floor. So that has to wait. Not a bad idea, but more so just evacuation, these kind of issues, small little things I feel that we need to change or edit just to get more value out of your play sessions, like the lighting, which was another good thing that we just need to fucking put to bed. Invisible jobbies. What the hell is that? Jobbies? What is a job? Joby? What is that? I don't know what that is. What's a jobby though? Is that an infected? Do you know how to recreate that yet? Because we tried recreating it and we couldn't. Because we wrote it. So what we ended up doing was we went into one of our test maps. We spawned an infected structure over a car. and then we removed it by killing it. And then we checked the navigation and we checked the collision, and every time it would rebuild the navigation and it would remove the collision. Then we tried it on a tree in a test map. Still didn't break. We tried it on a car. We tried it on a tree. So that's why I was like, and I was there on the share screen. We did it because I was like, so I don't know. There has to be something else that's happening in your play session that is like the magic bullet, like whatever is like crystallizing it to like actually cause it to occur. Because it doesn't just happen at the face of value. Do you have a save file where that happens? Always, every time you load? If you have a save file that always has that every time you load, we can solve that. Because then we can F8, we can load it into the editor, eject, and then start showing collision, start showing navigation, and find whatever object is hidden in the world. And then we can figure out what object it is, how it's broken, and then fix it. So if you have a save file, that'd be a godsend. Because otherwise, it's a needle in a haystack. In terms of like the moment you reported that previously, we went into like investigation mode for a good like 20 to 30 minutes. And then we were like, we literally can't recreate this. We don't know what to do. Um, I don't know. Since we're here, does anyone else have any number one things that they'd like us to fix or bugs? She kind of already listed out hers. Is there anything else anyone wants to throw into the ring before we leave? 'Cause I'm about to go jump into the River Canine. Oh, don't drop it here, G man. It'll be lost in Narnia. Drop it in the forums thread that Canine's gonna make, or Manus. Okay, well, I guess anyone doesn't have anything else that's ailing them besides just what we've already mentioned. All right, well, then we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for coming to this podcast. I'm going to be on the public Discord for Succeedly for the next hour or so, talking to people into the Darks realm. So you guys are welcome to top in and just kind of see what we're talking about and maybe throw in some of your 2 cents. If you want to support our development, please consider checking out our support packs on Steam for the different cosmetics we have for the vehicles. Maybe check out our Patreon. Maybe pledge to us on Discord for our. We have a pledge system on there if you don't want to go through Patreon. And then I'm going to be sending out quarterly cards, thank you cards to everyone that's given us over a certain amount of money. Uh, this week, I just got the envelopes from Amazon, like these little envelopes, so I can put the little welcome cards in there. They're like custom designed, and we're gonna have every quarter a different like design. So like you'll get like the spitter on one card, a juggernaut on another card, and then it'll be signed by the team on the back on the white side. So you figure I'm pretty excited for that for people that have been like giving us moolah on Discord or Patreon or whatever else. But anyhow, thank you guys so much, and I will catch you guys next time we get together for our next podcast. And